And I'm joined today here on Primetime Local News by Lloydminster Mayor Gerald Aalbers. It's great to have you here in studio, Mayor Aalbers.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
And we're talking today about you a little bit more in your role with SUMA, calling on the province to address housing and also the Saskatchewan Income Support Program. I'll give you an opportunity just to kind of talk a little bit about what some of the issues, especially with that program in particular.
So the City Mayor's Caucus met last week in Melville, Saskatchewan, and we discussed the challenges that are happening across cities across Saskatchewan, as well as towns and villages, but certainly more elevated at the city level. What we're seeing is that the government of Saskatchewan did some changes to their income support program for those that need income support, and it's called SIS, S-I-S. And the SIS program is a great program, except it's missing a few pieces. And what's happening is, first of all, the payments that were used for SIS often went to landlords, or a portion of it went to landlords to help pay the rent. Now they send that money directly to the individuals, which is wonderful in theory, except the challenge is not everyone can manage money and has challenges. And what's happening is landlords aren't getting paid, so that's resulting in people being evicted and becoming homeless. When that happens, then it moves it to a whole different spot. And then we see them on streets, in alleys and at shelters, or they'll end up in police stations, or they'll even worse end up in a hospital. And as we move that list up, it gets more expensive for the province to manage that. Mm-hmm. So what we're asking the province to do, again, raising this issue, and we've been raising it for some time, and we heard from the provincial auditor there's challenges with the SIS program. You know, we've got to be able to help those that are in greatest need, and that's where the program, I believe, is failing, and that's what we're hearing from other city mayors. You know, those folks just aren't getting the assistance. The provincial auditor recently announced that 60% of the calls were not being answered. So people that really need help aren't getting the help to ensure that Saskatchewan residents get what they need to continue and hopefully move out of the challenges that they have. They've become homeless or they're on assist for a reason. Mm-hmm. If we can get them working, can we get them set up? But you need a driver's license to get a paycheck or actually an address, and that's part of it is a driver's license. So if you don't have a place that's permanent, you can't get the paperwork that you need to follow through the process. You know, and we know how important it is for people to have something they can grasp onto. And we truly believe, and from the research that we've seen, that having a place to call home is the start. It may be rented, but at least a place that you can call home. You know, it's difficult imagining someone, stability, absolutely, being at the men's shelter and calling that your home. For some it works, but for some it doesn't, and that's not the solution to where we want to go.
So I know after that auditor report came out in Saskatchewan, the government's going to be looking at the program. What do you think are some changes that maybe should be made? Is it more staffing? Is it giving the money directly to the landlords once again? Is it increasing funding possibly?
I think there's a combination of pieces there. We've heard from landlords that, you know, from a landlord's perspective, if they're not going to get paid, they don't want to rent to somebody because then it becomes a lost leader for them. So I think it depends on the individual. Staffing has been identified that there's some challenges from that perspective of getting calls returned and working with people. The government has talked about adding some trustees, which I think are very important as well, that if someone is incapable, and it doesn't matter if you're on SIS or not, we know other people, elderly people that have trustees in place. So those are all the pieces to it, but they've got to be open to making some changes.
Now I know the housing issue, there's a lot of different things that impact it. Addictions and mental health, those are another factor. So do you think, obviously this program in particular needs to be reformed, or do you think the government overall should be doing more on some of those other social aspects?
Well, it's all tied together.
Yeah, because you were even mentioning the going to the hospital and stuff like that as well.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So the social issues that are being presented here raise other issues, because we see concern on the streets in our city and other cities across Saskatchewan. People don't feel as safe as they'd like to be. From the people that are on the streets, they're looking for something better. That's not their, in some cases they may choose that, but in most cases I think they really want something better. When the police become involved, and if there's issues, then that's a concern. Mental health and addiction falls into the health category in essence. And yes, there's those issues, and at the worst case scenario, they end up in a hospital bed. And like I say, each one of those elevates the cost per night stayed.
Yeah.
You put someone into a police cell, it's not cheap. You move them into a hospital bed, it's significantly more. Getting them into mental health and addiction treatment is very important, and that's not cheap either, we realize that. But if that's where the resources need to be put to, so that we can work with other organizations and help people get onto that road of recovery, if that's the challenge they have.
Now, I wanted to kind of move topics just a little bit. I think the city is out now with their budget digital survey for people to kind of give their input on a lot of different things, and there are four key kind of issues that are on there. So beautification, tourism's on there, downtown development, and satisfaction just kind of with city services as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're interested in hearing from this, and then kind of your thoughts as you guys head into that budget season? Because it's a difficult time for the city, always having to balance the services with the taxes, and you can't run a deficit as a municipality.
Absolutely, we can't. At the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day to start with in the new year, we have to have a balanced budget that has to be approved. We could end up in a deficit position at the end of the year, and then we have to either go to reserves, or we literally have to take next year's tax money and move it in to cover the debt. So it's challenging. Certainly the areas you mentioned, all four of them are important in our city. How do we build tourism, and where do we put energies that way? The downtown, we're seeing work being done today, and we'll see work continuing. Again, it's going to be based on how many dollars we have available to do that, both from taxpayers' money as well as grant funding and applications that way. Economic development is always a challenge. The overall budget, because everything we do and everything we touch seems to have gone up in price. We've recently purchased some new equipment. That was budgeted last year, starting in about this time. Our team's already starting to do their budget, and all of a sudden they put it out for tender, and a new lawnmower, a very large lawnmower, the 16-foot mower that cuts a lot of grass in the city, up $50,000 from when they budgeted to a year later. So we're seeing some huge challenges, and people have asked me, well, do we have to replace the equipment? We do have to, because if we don't keep up with the equipment in a reasonable fashion, then the equipment's broke down more often. So then the grass isn't cut, and we get calls, well, the city's not looking as nice as they'd like it to, or there's too many mosquitoes because of tall grass and things like that. And it's a balancing act, everything we do. So the budget opportunities, we like to give people that opportunity to see and say, okay, well, I'm concerned about safety and policing. We'd like to raise policing. So if you, what would that cost to the average homeowner? And it gives people that perspective. You know, the snow budget, I can tell you this, the snow budget took a real beating this past winter, and we've already allocated reserves money into the road program to ensure that we can handle snow this fall, because we ate through basically $2.8 million in snow budget. It's gone. So that is one of the challenges that we have, and we'll continue to ask people for their input.
I know there's a lot that has to be kind of weighed and balanced, so I don't envy your job or anyone at the city. So for those people out there that are interested in taking that survey, it's on the Your Voice Lloyd website, and we'll put that website on the bottom of the screen. Mayor Aalbers, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today.
Thank you, and I will add on the budget, we will be out and about at various. They were out at Street Fest. They're going to be out at the Filipino Festival coming up in a couple weeks, and it'll also be at Pancake Breakfast to City Hall in early July, when we get to welcome the parade and the fair back to Lloydminster.
Very excited for that. A lot of events happening this summer, so it should be a good summer.
It's going to be a great summer, folks. There's a lot of opportunities. Invite your friends and family to join them. Join you at one of the many events. When we get chuck wagons twice in a year, you can't ask for anything better.
No, that's awesome. Thanks again, Mayor Aalbers.
Thank you.